Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, we have a big show for you today. The NFL league year has officially begun. That means all of the news that came out yesterday and the day before it with the tampering period, the official pre-free agency period, that can be finalized now. No takebacks, no nothing like that. New league year began exactly 1 hour ago today. We're going to take a look at the winners and losers of the tampering period, the pre-free agency period, as I like to call it, as well as, since it's a new year, these NFL teams have resolutions. We're going to go through some NFL team resolutions. We're going to talk about the Panthers. The Panthers have made a lot of moves. So we're going to talk about them a little bit, and the Chargers as well, cutting Mike Williams to get underneath the cap. There were a lot of decisions for them to be made. How is that going to affect them and the rest of the league, with Mike Williams now being a free agent? But we are also going to talk a little bit about baseball. It's been very football heavy this week because that's where a lot of news has been. But we're going to talk about baseball. Garrett Cole, perennial Cy Young contending pitcher, has been shut down for the first 1 to 2 months of the season. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in our fourth segment. But before we get too far into our topics today, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation. You leave a message with it. It'll pop up on the bottom of the screen. We appreciate anything that you do give out to us. Again, tip and donation link is gsmcpodcast.net. But like I was saying, let's just get right into the first segment. We're going to be talking about the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers came out. They had four major players who they needed to cut at least one of them to get under the cap. They did end up cutting Mike Williams. Who they signed to a pretty big contract a couple years ago. He has been injury prone. The other options that they could have gotten rid of, wide receiver Keenan Allen, Khalil Mack, who's coming off an incredible bounce back season, where he had, I believe, like 15 sacks. He had like 7 sacks in one game. Or Joey Bosa, who's been a cornerstone of that defense. Both of those guys are getting paid a lot of money. In fact, you combine two of them, I believe they're making about $120 million against the cap combined. So they had to cut one of those guys. They ended up cutting Mike Williams, who probably was the most expendable of all those. Mike Williams is a big body receiver. I believe he's 29 now. When he's healthy and on the field, he's one of the best jump ball receivers in the league. He is big, tall, and fast, and an incredible contested ball catcher. You put him up one-on-one against a lot of corners, give him a jump ball, he's going to come down with it most of the time. And that's what makes him special. There's a lot of teams that could use a guy like that. A team that pops right into my head right away is the Giants. I'm not sure how much they're actually looking to compete this season with the moves that they have made in this offseason. But that's a team that I think he'd fit really well on. Really, a lot of teams could use a guy. The Bills, I think, would be a great fit for him as well. They obviously just lost Gabe Davis. He went down to Jacksonville. But getting another big, long guy on the outside to replace Gabe Davis, a guy like Mike Williams, who, as long as he's on the field, is more productive, especially opposite Stephon Diggs. And we've seen what Mike Williams can do opposite a star receiver like Keenan Allen. So we are we're gonna I'm curious where you guys think it would go. I think the Bills are a really good spot for him. I think that's where he's going to end up going. There's a lot of options out there in the NFL for a wide receiver like Mike Williams. I think the Chiefs are going to try and get him. I think a team like the Commanders might try and get him. The uh, the Cowboys, after losing Michael Gallup, Michael Gallup is like a Mike Williams. Is like the Kmart version of Mike Williams, I guess. So bringing in him to the Cowboys organization might be huge, especially for a Cowboys organization that has literally done nothing this free agency. Um, it's been very disappointing as a Cowboy, if you are a Cowboys fan, to watch all these other teams improve or make changes, try and improve their team, and the Cowboys just sit on their hands, doing nothing, twiddling their thumbs. Now, free agency isn't over. In fact, technically, it's only an hour old, but a lot of these deals have already been made. Most of the major free agents are off the board. The biggest name left is going to be Tyron Smith, who is leaving the Cowboys. So it's a very interesting situation that the Cowboys have found themselves in. I think Mike Williams to the Cowboys is a is a really good move. Honestly, I think either there or the Bills or the Chiefs. That's my top three for Mike Williams to go to. But as far as the Chargers go, they needed to make one of these moves. They obviously didn't want to. They were very, very deep uh, in cap problems. They had to cut one of those four big guys that they'd already handed major contracts to, um, and they chose Mike Williams. I think he was the most expendable out of those three. I know you might say Keenan Allen is old. He's lost his step, but he had one of his best seasons last year as in terms of volume. Uh, they don't really have a guy that can stretch the field, and without Keenan Allen as their guy in the middle of the field or short routes, they don't really have much of a passing attack, even with an elite quarterback like Justin Herbert back there. Now, Nick Bosa and Khalil Mack both had really good seasons last year, Khalil Mack especially, but they're also older. It's just you don't want to blow up your defense at a point where there's not really replacements for those guys on defense, where you can go out, if you're the Chargers, and get a guy like a Calvin Ridley, for instance. I think Calvin Ridley would be a great fit over there in I think Calvin Ridley would be a great fit over there. Oh, and just as I'm saying that, the Titans have signed Calvin Ridley. So that is off the board. Uh, 20 Calvin Ridley, who's 29, gets a 4-year, $92 million deal with $50 million fully guaranteed to go to the Titans. So scratch back what I said. Calvin Ridley will not be a Charger. He is a Titan. Very interesting here. Initial reactions to this, him being the Titans are having a very interesting offseason. Obviously, they've moved on from their old core. They got rid of Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill is gone. But they've had a really sneaky good offseason, building around presumably Will Levis. I assume that's their guy based on how they're doing this offseason. They go out and they get big wide receiver, Calvin Ridley, who wasn't bad last season. It wasn't prime Calvin Ridley like we saw him before he missed the last couple seasons. But he was still really solid last year in Jacksonville, in a really crowded wide receiver room in Jacksonville. Uh, Calvin Ridley was really solid. So that's a very good pickup for them. He'll slot into the wide receiver one. A team like with the Titans who didn't really have a wide receiver one. They had Treylon Burks, who can't stay on the field to save his life in his first 2 seasons in the NFL. But outside of that, they don't really have a receiver. They had Nick Westbrook-Akine, not a wide receiver one. But Calvin Ridley goes to the Titans. They also brought in a center, a really, really nice center. The Titans are in an interesting spot. Obviously, they brought in Tony Pollard as well. They already have Tajay Spears. Both of those guys play similar roles. I'm not sure who's better. I might have stayed with Tajay Spears because he's cheaper and younger, but both of those guys play similar styles. But they've built up a lot for a team that isn't awful. They're in an awful position. I thought they were gonna, once they let Derrick Henry walk, they were going to go and tank for a little bit. But they're building up. They're giving themselves a shot. I really like what they're doing, especially in a division like the AFC South that they're in. Obviously, you have Houston, who is presumed to be at the top with CJ Stroud and all them boys over there. The Texans have also had a very nice offseason. But the Colts are your other big competition. They are in a weird spot where they're very good or close to competing, but their quarterback situation is a mess. They have Anthony Richardson, and as long as he can stay healthy, they should be good. But last year they were using Gardner Minshew all season, who was fine, but nothing special. And then the Jaguars are in that division as well. It's a tough division, so they're just trying to keep pace in there. But yeah, in our next segment coming up, we are going to do winners and losers. I know we kind of got into that a little bit in this segment with that breaking news. I really like the move I understand the move. I think that was the best option for the Chargers. There's plenty of free agent wide receivers out there you can get for cheap to replace a guy like Mike Williams, or you can draft one. You have that number 5 pick in the draft. You can go out, maybe get a guy like Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze to replace him. Maybe you get a Brock Bowers to replace him. I know they just signed tight end Will Dissly, so maybe they're not going to get Brock Bowers, but they could still get a pass catcher in that draft. I wouldn't put it past them now that they've gotten rid of Mike Williams. So I'd love to hear what you guys think about this. In our next segment, we're going to go over winners and losers. We're going to talk about a couple teams that we've already touched on, as well as some other teams that have had really, really solid free agencies and some that just have not been very good. That's coming up in our next segment. Stick around. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows with 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you for sticking with me through that break. If you are just tuning in our first segment, we talked about Mike Williams getting released, and we had breaking news right as I was talking about the man himself. Calvin Ridley was just paid by the Titans, 4 years, $92 million, 50 of that guaranteed. So very, very interesting first segment. In our second segment here, we're going to go over winners and losers of the pre-free agency period, the tampering period. The league year started today at 4 o'clock, so we are going to go over the big winners, big losers of the first 2 days of the NFL free agency. But before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are. Leave a tip or donation. You can leave a message with that tip. It'll pop up on the bottom of the screen there. We'll have a little conversation about what you had to say, not just for me or you or the people in your chat that you're watching this on, but everyone across all platforms, including Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and every podcast network that this goes out on later tonight. We appreciate everything that you guys do give. Again, that link to leave a tip or donation is gsmcpodcast.net. But But like I was saying, we're going to get right into it. Winners and losers of the pre-free agency period, or the tampering period, whatever you want to call it. And we're just going to start off with a relatively obvious one. We'll start off with a couple winners, and then we'll get into some losers. Winner, the Atlanta Falcons. It's hard not to be a winner when you go out and you fix your quarterback situation. They went out and they added Kirk Cousins to the to that team that already has a lot of great weapons. Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, all of whom were drafted in the top 5 of the NFL not top 5, top 10 of the NFL draft. That offensive line is really good. They add a guy in Kirk Cousins who, if his Achilles injury heals up the way that it hopefully should, um, he's going to be very successful in Atlanta. He can do everything that you need him to do. He's not going to be the most special quarterback, but he is going to make every throw, make every good decision that you need him to make. That's going to make a world of difference for the Falcons in the league this year. Obviously, going from Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke to Kirk Cousins, it's a big move. So they are the first of a couple winners that I have here for the pre-free agency, the tampering period. Go into a loser now, the Giants. Obviously, they made it's an interesting look at their offseason so far. They've made a lot of improvements at a lot of places. They went out and they got Brian Burns. They went out and they signed 3 offensive linemen to shore up that offensive line. But they still lost their biggest productive player on offense, a person that basically was their entire offense in Saquon Barkley. And not only that, they lose him to the division rival Philadelphia Eagles. That is a loss for me. As much as they might be trying to mask it by making a couple other moves, it might throw them more in the neutral territory. But losing a guy like Saquon puts them firmly in the loser category for me, personally at least. It's going to be really tough to replace him. Devin Singletary is not going to be able to do that. He is not he's not the hugest difference maker in running back. I know he's coming off a very, very good season, career high season where he rushed for, I believe, 898 yards. With the Texans not even starting the year as the starter, taking the job from Dameon Pierce as the year went on. But it's a very interesting situation. I don't think they're winners. I think the Giants are firmly in that loser category. Another team that I'm gonna put into the winner team that I'm gonna put in the winner category here is the Vikings. I know they lost Kirk Cousins, and that's a big sting. But you go look at some of the other moves they made, bringing in Aaron Jones on a 1-year, $7 million deal. That is huge. The ability for them to go out and get and fix what was their biggest weakest last season, probably. In the excuse me, what probably was their biggest season. Getting a running back there, they really needed one, and Aaron Jones is a very good running back. I know he's 29, he's going to be 30 at the end of next season, which is why the Packers chose Josh Jacobs over him. 3-year age difference. I still think he's a better running back than Josh Jacobs regardless. He's just so versatile. You can line him up in the slot. He can work as a wide receiver. That's something that most teams can't do. Now, you still have... They did go out and they get Sam Darnold. I don't think he's going to be their final starter. I think they're going to go out and do something. Maybe trade up in the draft. Maybe trade for Justin Fields, although that is very far-fetched as they are division rivals with the Bears. But I'm very happy with the Vikings offseason so far. There's still plenty of guys out there that they can get. So it's not like super high on the winner category, but I do think that they were winners. Losers, again, the Miami Dolphins. They've just lost so many players. They lost Xavier Howard, who was a little hurt. Jerome Baker, they cut as well. Uh, Christian Wilkins, big defensive tackle. Robert Hunt, big offensive lineman. And Andrew Van Ginkel, who they've cut. They didn't use their franchise tag on anyone. They lost a lot of huge players, and most of those were downgrades, I would say. That defense was really, really solid last year, but a lot of those were downgrades. Uh, you go from Robert Hunt to Connor Williams. You know, you go you go from Jerome Baker to Jordan Brooks. It's just not it's not a good move for these teams. They're very, I guess I would say, they're not lateral moves. They're lateral moves at best. And I know they had to stay below the cap. They've got a lot of guys to pay. They're still figuring out the contract situation with Tua, but I think the a team for me that is a loser is the Dolphins. Uh, and then I want to talk a little bit about the Panthers. They're another loser for me. Uh, it's interesting what they've done because they've done so much, right? They've traded for Deontay Johnson. That's a plus. They had to give up a corner in Dane Jackson, who is just he's okay, but nothing special. They traded away Brian Burns for a second and a fifth, and that doesn't seem that bad until you remember a couple years ago they were being offered 2 firsts and a second for this same guy. Uh, so it's not a good look. Excuse me. After trying to hold on to him and compete, and then this is a miserable season. Really, no matter what they did this offseason, they probably would have been labeled as losers. Uh, Basically because of, the fact that they had the number one pick and traded it away after trading up to get that number one pick last season and draft Bryce Young instead of CJ Stroud, who at the time was the consensus number one overall pick. Obviously, hindsight is 2020, but the Panthers have had a really, really interesting offseason, and it hasn't been all bad. But they did let a lot of their defensive stars go. Frankie Louvu walked, and Brian Burns was traded. That defense, as much as it was already bad, it has been decimated. And the offense is improved a little bit. They should probably go out and get some more weapons, some more. They have focused on the offensive line. They went and signed 3 offensive linemen. It was a little bit of an overpayment, but it's it's a very interesting spot that the Panthers found themselves in because they're not a very desirable location for free agents to go. Obviously the whole situation with the owner. They're a bad team, which doesn't help. We've seen this before. They're having to overpay everyone. We saw it with Jacksonville just a couple years ago when they had to pay the Jacksonville tax to get some of those guys down there, like Christian Kirk. They had to pay a little more money for him to get down there, and the Panthers are going to have to do this. Now, the Jags have turned it around. They're no longer that franchise that people don't want to sign with. People are happy signing with the Jaguars now. But the Panthers right now are that franchise that you have to pay that Panther tax. You have to pay that Panther tax if you want to get these top-tier free agents because if they have another option, they're not coming there. And that's never a spot that you want to be in. Never, ever. And then the last team that I want to talk about is the Jets. I think they're winners so far. They haven't done a lot, but they have gotten 2 offensive linemen, and that was their biggest weakness. Now, with Aaron Rodgers coming back, that's going to be the biggest spot that he needs to be fixed. You still have Garrett Wilson on the outside. Their receivers will be just fine, but the offensive line desperately needs to improve. It was one of the worst offensive lines. He's one of the worst offensive lines in all of football last season, and they have not done a lot to improve it. So, as far as them improving, I think they've done a really good job. The Jets went out and they got, Morgan Moses from the Ravens. They went out and signed a couple more offensive linemen. They've done a really good job. I'm very happy with what they did. They were low key moves, but what the Jets have done, brought back Thomas Morstead, who one of the best punters in the league. I know that's, again, at a position that we don't think about too much here when we're doing that analysis. It doesn't affect the game too much, but he legitimately won at least one game for them last season. Now, I know that was against the Giants, but he legitimately won a game for them last season. It was a disgusting rainy game. I was there live, and he destroyed the Giants with his leg. So bringing a guy like that back is important. The Jets desperately need to have a good season this year. Aaron Rodgers, hopefully, or presumably, will be back, I'll say. And he needs to succeed. Otherwise, the Jets are just going to go more into a dumpster fire than they already are. They went so far in on him for the last season to just be a disaster on and off the field. And it still kind of has been a disaster off the field for the Jets this offseason, but they're right now winners of that pre-free agency. Coming up in our next segment, it's a new league year. It's a new year. It's a new league year. It's a new year. We're gonna talk about some New Year's resolutions that NFL teams will have. So we'll go down a list and just go through some New Year's resolutions. Talked about that stuff. Thank you everybody so much for watching so far. We will be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with me through that break. If you are just tuning in, we have covered winners and losers of the pre-arbitration, not arbitration, the pre-free agency, pre-league year tampering period in the NFL, as well as some of the major moves of the day, including Calvin Ridley signing a massive deal with the Titans while we were live, Mike Williams getting cut from the Chargers to get underneath the cap, excuse me, and a couple other major pieces of news. In this segment, as a new league year comes around, lots of teams have New Year's resolutions, and obviously they all want to win the Super Bowl. But we're not going to go as broad as that. We're going to go a little more in depth here. Talk about some stuff that each team might be wishing for. But yeah, that's what we'll talk about here in this segment. If you were just, excuse me, but before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation. Anything you leave a note with it. It'll pop up on the bottom of the screen there. Stay up there on the screen for a minute for me, you, everyone else to see, not just on your platform, but on every platform we are live on, and that we go and post these episodes on later. We'll see and hear. We'll have a little conversation about what you have to say. We appreciate everything that you do give. Again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. But like I was saying, we are going to talk about NFL resolutions. Obviously, we all have our own resolutions at the beginning of the year, but this is the New Year's. Happy New Year's Day for the NFL. Everyone, made some resolutions. So we're gonna go through a couple of them, see what they had. We'll start over here with with the AFC East. The Buffalo Bills. They want to they want to beat the Chiefs, beat the Demons in the playoffs. Obviously, the Bills have been so close so many times. This year especially seemed like the year that they had to do it. They just can't quite get over that hump of the Chiefs. Every single year in the playoffs, they run into them. They need to be able to beat the Chiefs. That is their New Year's resolution. For the Miami Dolphins here, uh, they're looking for some health on their defense. Obviously, their defense has been ravaged by free agency and cap casualties, but even before, their defense was a mess. It was not a very good situation for them. It's the reason why they kind of started slipping towards the end of the year and not performing against good teams. Uh, the Dolphins need they ran into a tough situation in the Chiefs playing in one of the coldest games in NFL history. But having a healthy defense would have massively improved that. So that is that's their resolution here. The Cowboys' New Year's resolution again. The Cowboys' New Year's resolution moving into the NFC here is to make it past that second round. They haven't won a Super Bowl since the '90s. Dak Prescott, they need to figure something out with him. He wants to get paid. The Cowboys aren't going to pay him. They haven't made a move in free agency yet. They need to go out, make a big move, prove that they can do it. They believe every single year. Every single year they believe, but they just haven't been able to get over that hump. The Lions don't really have a resolution. They had most of their prayers answered last season, and they're just enjoying the ride right now. They made it to an NFC Championship game, hosted a playoff game for the first time since 1993. 30 years since the last home playoff game they had. The last time they had a home playoff game, the NFC North wasn't a division. This was the first time in history that the Lions won the NFC North. So they don't really have a New Year's resolution here. They are riding off the coattails of success. Houston Texans here, they want C.J. Stroud to continue to develop. C.J. Stroud is one of the brightest young players in all of the sport. They obviously won Rookie of the Year. He taught him to a playoff after being the number 2 overall pick last year in the draft. They had been a very miserable team. They brought in new head coach, brought in a new quarterback. Everything changed like that, and they are just hoping that it wasn't a fluke. I don't think it's a fluke, but that is what they are looking at here. The Carolina Panthers are looking at a are looking for their New Year's resolution is just about everything. They need a new defense. They've got a laundry list of stuff. They are really hoping that Bryce Young can turn out improvements, that their new coach will stay long term, and that David Tepper will not fire another coach this before another season ends. The Carolina Panthers have gone through so many coaches in just the 2 years that David Tepper has taken over the team. I believe he has fired a head coach every single season. They have had so many interim coaches. They are looking for stability as their New Year's resolution. The the Washington Commanders' New Year's resolution is going to be a new defense. They fired all their coaches, and their defense was just atrocious last year. They've already helped by bringing in Frankie Louvu. We talked about Jeremy Chin from the Panthers as well. Both of those guys are going to be huge. And breaking just now, they've signed Bobby Wagner, the Commanders did, to a 1-year max value of $8 million deal. That has $6 million guaranteed. It's not a great move, I don't think, for the Commanders. Bobby Wagner is not the same player he used to be. He's fine. He's obviously a great leader. He continues to be signed to be a great leader, especially a team like Washington could use a leader like Bobby Wagner in that clubhouse. But as far as really helping the team on the field goes, he doesn't move the needle that much for me. He hasn't been very good for the last couple seasons, and I know if you go look at like Pro Football Focus, they love his game so much. They rate him super highly every single year. But he just doesn't have the same burst. He gets beaten side to side. He's not very good in coverage. Tight ends are faster than him, and he's very, like, as good as his instincts are and as smart as he is, he's just not the athlete that he used to be, getting around that football field. So it's tough for him to make these plays. As smart as he is, again, I think he'd be a perfect player coach, however you want to put it. I think he'd be a great coach. But as far as on the field play, I don't think he quite has the juice left in it to really make a world of difference for that team. But Bobby Wagner to the Commanders, $8.5 million, $6 million of that guaranteed. The Commanders continue to have a lot of cap space. They've had an interesting offseason. And I like what they've done. I really have liked what they've done. So we'll see what they do. Obviously, they're going to draft a quarterback, or most likely they're going to draft a quarterback. It's a very interesting spot to be in for the Washington Commanders. But yeah, in our next segment coming up, we're going to transition out of football and into some baseball. Some big news coming out of Yankees camp that has to do with Garrett Cole and his injury. We're going to talk about Aaron Judge and his injury, as well as any other major breaking baseball news that is happening around the MLB as we continue to inch closer to the start of the regular season. Opening day is less than a month away. We're right on the cusp of it. Very excited. We'll start doing some MLB breakdowns by division coming up real soon once we get closer to opening day. But yeah, stick around. Thank you everybody so much for tuning in to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. We'll be right back with segment 4. Stick around. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with me through that break. I appreciate you guys doing that. If you are just tuning in, we have had a lot of football talk. We talked about winners and losers, some New Year's resolution as the new league year begins in the NFL, and we talked about some of the breaking news. Bobby Wagner signing with the Commanders just a couple minutes ago. Calvin Ridley signing with the Tennessee Titans live, actually, right after we said his name. And Mike Williams being cut from the Chargers, as well as some other news that went around the NFL today as the new league year officially began at 4 o'clock Eastern Time. But we're going to transition out of football. There's been a lot of football talk recently. We are going to transition into baseball, a sport that is warming up. We are in the midst of spring training. Opening day is just about 20 days away now. Whew, right around the corner, is very exciting. But there has been some very major news coming out of Yankees camp. And we'll talk about all that and more coming up right. But before we get into that, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation. We appreciate anything that you do give. If you leave a tip or donation, your message will pop up on the bottom of the screen there. We'll have a little conversation about what you had to say. It'll stay up there for a minute. We appreciate anything that you do give. It'll go out to every single platform, not just the one that you're watching on, but every single platform. Again, that link to leave a tip or donation is gsmcpodcast.net. But like I was saying, there is a lot of big news coming out of baseball. Specifically, Garrett Cole, perennial Cy Young competition pitcher for the New York Yankees, down with an injury for the first 1 to 2 months of the season. Garrett Cole, who year after year and probably still is the best pitcher in all of Major League Baseball. He carried the Yankees as much as he could carry the Yankees last season, but he is a little bit on the older side now. Garrett Cole is a little bit over the hill. I believe he's 34. Aaron Judge also has some injury news. He is going to play through his injury on opening day. That's the news. So that's good news for Yankees fans. But Aaron Judge is also 33. He says that toe injury is going to bother him for the rest of his career, which is not a good sign. The toe injury that kept him out for almost half of the season last year is just going to be nagging him, and it might end his career shorter than a lot of people expect it to be. Not that we expected Aaron Judge to play into his 40s, but players are going longer nowadays in almost every single sport. Aaron Judge, unfortunately, might not be one of those players because of this nagging toe injury that he said is just not going away. We'll have to see how it affects his play. We know plenty of baseball players play through injuries all the time. Plenty of athletes play through injuries all the time. But hopefully this is something that doesn't affect his game, because if he is off, I know they brought Juan Soto in, but they're not winning a World Series, and they need to win a World Series soon. The Yankees do. The Yankees really need to win a World Series, but shutting Garrett Cole down for the first 2 months really hurts. We just talked about it. He is arguably the best pitcher in all of baseball. Every single year he is at least in the Cy Young conversation. He is so good. He's so dominant. Everywhere he goes, he signed that massive contract in 2020, in that 2020 offseason, to join the Yankees. And he's lived up to every single part of that. He is a true ace. It's hard to find guys like that nowadays. There aren't that many that you can trot out for 7 innings every 5 days. You can just trot out, and he'll take you no matter what through the first 5 innings, through the first 6 innings. Most guys that are starters in the MLB don't do that anymore. Analytics and stuff, obviously, you're less effective once you're at pitch 100 than when you're at pitch 2. But Garrett Cole is one of those guys that doesn't seem to get tired on the mound. His consistency is crazy, and he is probably the best pitcher in all of baseball. So that is a huge loss for the New York Yankees. And maybe we go and we see them sign one of those big free agent pitchers. They've been in the mix for guys like Blake Snell and for guys like Jordan Montgomery. They haven't really had true conversations with those, or like serious conversations, I would say. I'm sure they've had conversations, but they haven't really had serious conversations with those guys. Uh, but maybe we go and we see them sign it. Those guys are still not in camp. Uh, and that is crazy to me that he's still not in camp. Uh, maybe I can't tell what they're asking for. The Angels are still in the mix to go get those guys. The Red Sox are still in the mix to go get those guys. There's a lot of teams out there that might go get those guys. Maybe the White Sox do it after they trade Dylan Cease. Dylan Cease, who again is another one of those really, really good pitchers that is talking about getting out of there. White Sox organization has fallen apart. They're not going to be very good this season. But Garrett Cole being shut down for the Yankees, I'm curious how much that's going to affect them. Obviously, losing one of the best pitchers in all of baseball is going to hurt you. But a guy that plays every 5 days, you can't pencil in a win ever, because baseball is a very finicky game. But more times than not, you can just pencil in a W when he starts. And that's a luxury that is really nice to have. And to lose that for the first couple months of the season, I'm not that's really going to hurt their chances of winning the division. As far as making the playoffs, I think they can still do it, but no Garrett Cole for the first 2 months when you're in a division with the Tampa Bay Rays, when you're in a division with the Baltimore Orioles, when you're in a division with the Toronto Blue Jays, and when you're in a division with the Boston Red Sox, who have really retooled. Not having your ace for the first 2 months really, really hurts. And I don't think they're going to be able to recover in the division race from this. I think that is that big of a deal, especially in a stacked division. Now, say, for instance, the Yankees were in the White Sox division. I don't think this matters quite as much. But since they are in a really, really talented and stacked division, this is really going to affect them. I'd love to hear what everybody thinks of this. 1 to 2 months for this. Obviously, you need him to be healthy. You can't rush him back. Regular season games only matter so much. There's 162 of them. You need him at his best for the most of them, and you need him at the best for the playoffs if you have any chance of making a World Series run. Pitchers are so hugely important, and everyone knows that pitchers are one of those shiny positions in sports. Quarterbacks, shiny position. Pitchers, shiny position. There are those guys that get all the attention, and because they're the star of the show. They're the center of attention. But yeah, I think this is really going to affect them. I think there's a chance that this might knock them out of the playoffs, and I think that's a little too far, especially since he's only gonna. If on his shortest part of his timetable, he'll only miss about 2 weeks. That's the shortest timetable. Now, he'll probably end up missing about a month and a half of the regular season, if I had to guess. Again, I'm not a doctor. I haven't seen the injury, but my best guess is he's probably missing about a month and a half due to injury, and he's going to have to ramp back up after that, get into that rehab starts. He's probably not going to be back until June. And that is a huge loss for the that's a huge loss for them. So I'd love to hear what you guys think about it here in the comments. Thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in to this episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Tomorrow we'll be back. We're going to do some more baseball tomorrow. We're going to catch back up with our series of reviewing baseball off seasons. I know we kind of took a break from that, took a back seat to some bigger stories that were happening around the league. We're also going to talk a little bit about Victor Wembanyama tomorrow and some March Madness, because March Madness Selection Sunday is on Sunday. Or not this Sunday, but next Sunday. It's coming up. I'm very excited. We're going to talk some March Madness. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in. I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Check us out on YouTube, on Twitch, on all our podcast networks. See you tomorrow. You have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.